What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and today I'm making my 2024 NFL mock draft, so let's hop into it. And if you like this type of stuff, please consider subscribing. It would really mean a lot. But without further ado, let's just hop straight into this video. So the draft's coming up April 25th, so it's still a couple weeks out. But I figure now would be the perfect time to throw in a mock draft. It's post-free agency, the combine's already over, and a lot of these teams have an idea of who they're going to pick. So I'm going to stop wasting time and just hop straight into it. And with the first pick, the Bears are on the clock. And I can almost guarantee you they will be drafting Caleb Williams, quarterback out of USC. They traded Justin Fields to the Steelers in the offseason. They went out, got some weapons, and Keenan Allen, DeAndre Swift, to really bolster that offense. And this pick is really just a no-brainer pick. If they were to go in a different direction, I think it would just shock pretty much about everybody who follows football. So moving on, we got the Washington Commanders coming in at number 2. And they're another team that traded their quarterback. They traded Sam Howell to Seattle over the offseason. So they almost have to go quarterback here as well. And I do have them going quarterback. I have them taking Jalen Daniels out of LSU, and I don't know where he is on this list. Oh, here he is, ranked 21. So they grab their quarterback of the future as well, with both the top 2 picks being quarterbacks. And then we have the New England Patriots on the clock at number 3. And right here, as you can see, their needs quarterback, wide receiver, tackle, and defensive end. And this is where the draft could really go in a whole bunch of ways. The Patriots could trade out of this pick. They could go wide receiver. They could go quarterback. And I think they will go quarterback with this pick. And I don't think it's going to be Drake May. I think it's going to be J.J. McCarthy. The Patriots are another team that traded their quarterback in this offseason. They traded Mac Jones to the Jacksonville Jaguars, so they need a new quarterback. And J.J. McCarthy, after the combine, after free agency, there has been a lot of hype around him from his pro day and stuff. So I know his draft stock is rising, and I think we all know what happened the last time the Patriots took a Michigan quarterback, even though it happened in a later round. They went on to win like 6 Super Bowls or something. So yeah, and I'm not going to keep scrolling to find this. I'll just use the search up here. So I have them taking J.J. McCarthy at number 3. Then we have the Arizona Cardinals at number 4. And this is a pick where I just don't think they should overthink it this whole offseason, since really the end of the college season and the pro season. Marvin Harrison Jr. has been mocked to the Cardinals and what seems like every mock draft I look at. So I'm not going to overthink this pick. They definitely need a wide receiver to pair with Kyler Murray. So they get arguably the best wide receiver in the draft in Marvin Harrison. Then we have the Chargers coming in at number 5, and I think they're another team that definitely needs to go the wide receiver route. They parted ways with both Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, so there's definitely a hole there. Justin Herbert's top weapon right now, I think, is like Quentin Johnston, last year's first-round pick, and he hasn't really panned out. So I do think they doubled down, drafted another wide receiver here in the first round this year as well. And I think they grabbed Malik Nabers out of LSU, another guy who, was definitely projected as a first-round pick, but with the combine and everything, his draft stock has only risen since then. So I do think it's a good pick for them. And they go out and get Justin Herbert, a new wide receiver 1. And moving on, we have the New York Giants. And this is another interesting pick. As you can see under their needs section, they need just about everything: quarterback, wide receiver, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, defensive back. So this pick could go in a whole bunch of different directions. And I actually have them taking quarterback Drake May out of North Carolina. They gave Daniel Jones that contract extension a couple off seasons ago. He's definitely not panned out. So why not draft who they think can be their quarterback of the future, who doesn't have to start right away with Daniel Jones still being on the roster? So I think it's a good idea for them to just, develop Drake May, let him sit for a year or two, and then if Daniel Jones still doesn't pan out within this next year or so, then they can just give him the boot, hand the reins over to Drake May, and hopefully turn that ship around. And then we have the Tennessee Titans coming in at pick number 7. And this is another pick, much like the Arizona Cardinals, where everywhere I've looked, all these mock drafts have them going offensive tackle. So I'm not going to deviate from everything I've seen. And I have them taking offensive tackle Joe Alt out of Notre Dame, arguably the best offensive tackle in this draft, as they shore up their offensive line. So moving on to the Atlanta Falcons, they address their quarterback needs in free agency, getting Kirk Cousins to come aboard. So their needs are more on the defensive side of the ball. As you can see, defensive line and cornerback. So that's definitely the route I do believe they will take in this draft. And I have them going defensive end. And I don't see and I have them taking Jared Verse, an edge out of Florida State, another guy whose draft stock has only risen since the combine. So the Chicago Bears are back on the clock at number 9, so they've already drafted Caleb Williams. And in their needs, it says they also need wide receiver and defensive line, and I almost went wide receiver with this pick. Odunze out of Washington is still available. And the only reason I don't have them going with this pick is they already had DJ Moore. They went out and got Keenan Allen in a trade. So I don't like the idea of them drafting a wide receiver this high because they already addressed it earlier in the offseason. So I actually have them going with offensive tackle Olu Fashionadu out of Penn State just because Caleb Williams is going to need protected. Young quarterbacks will need to have a good offensive line, so why not just shore up that line? They could also very well trade out of this pick, but I'm not going to do any trades in this mock draft. I think it just could get pretty messy. And that brings the New York Jets on the clock at number 10. And I have them taking tight end Brock Bowers, the best tight end in the draft, really by a long margin. And it seems like all the great quarterbacks have a good tight end. It's like Tom Brady, Gronk, Mahomes, Kelsey, Drew Brees, Jimmy Graham. So why not pair Aaron Rodgers with the top tight end prospect in this draft? It just makes sense to me. So that's the route I have the Jets taken here. And then we have the Minnesota Vikings on the clock, another team that really has a ton of needs: quarterback, tight end, offensive line, defensive line, secondary. So this pick could really go in a whole bunch of ways as well. And I actually have them going quarterback here with yet another quarterback off the board. And I have them taking Michael Penix out of Washington. Right now on their roster, they have Sam Darnold, and he's just not the answer. They definitely need an upgrade over him. And they have a ton of weapons. They got Justin Jefferson. They have Jordan Addison. They have TJ Hawkinson. They just have a ton of skill position guys. So Penix's transition from college to the league, if he goes to Minnesota, I don't think it's going to be that bad because he has a ton of weapons, a ton of skill guys around him to be able to make the process that much easier. Then we have the Denver Broncos on the clock at pick number 12. And they're another quarterback needy team, but I don't think any more quarterbacks are going to go in the first round. I know Bo Nix could go late. Maybe a team will trade up and get him, but I definitely think he could go to a quarterback needy team like the Broncos or the Raiders in a later round. So I have the Broncos going in a different direction. I have them addressing the defense, and I have them drafting cornerback Terron Arnold out of Alabama, and they get arguably the best cornerback in the draft. And then at pick number 13, we have the Raiders on the clock, and they did get Gardner Minshew in the offseason, so he is a serviceable quarterback. So I don't think they're going to take quarterback this early in the draft with a guy like Minshew who can definitely steer the ship and make the Raiders super competitive. So I think they address the other side of the ball and go defense here, just beef up that secondary. And I have them taking cornerback Quinion Mitchell out of Toledo to do that. Then we have the New Orleans Saints, another quarterback needy team. And here I have Rome Odunze going. The Saints, they cut Michael Thomas in the offseason. Hasn't really done anything for them in what seems like a couple years. They do have Chris Olave. So giving Olave a second running mate, a solid wide receiver too, a nice 1-2 punch for New Orleans, I think can go a long way for Derek Carr or whoever ends up quarterbacking the Saints in the future. And moving on to the 15th pick, we have the Indianapolis Colts, another team that really doesn't have too many needs. It only has listed wide receiver and defensive back. So the Colts are in definitely a pretty good state. And I have them going wide receiver. And I have them going with Adonai Mitchell out of Texas. I'll just type that in here real quick. Anthony Richardson is coming back from injury, so why not just give him another weapon, another pick? That just kind of makes sense to me. Like, why not just make the offense that much better? Then we have the Seattle Seahawks on the clock at 16, and they need help in the trenches on both sides of the ball. They need help on this defensive secondary. So I have them addressing their needs on the defense in the trenches by getting Dallas Turner out of Alabama. I think it'll be either Turner or Jared Verse, who I have going to the Falcons being the first defensive end off the board. So Seattle just shores up that defensive line a little bit. And then we have the Jacksonville Jaguars on the clock at 17. They're another team where I think it addresses the defensive line, the defensive side of the ball. And I have them taking Byron Murphy, defensive lineman out of Texas, to do so. And then we have the Cincinnati Bengals on the clock at 18. And their needs: defensive line, offensive tackle, and tight end. And if Brock Bowers somehow doesn't go to the Jets or really inside the top 15 and he falls, I definitely don't think he will fall past the Bengals. Why not give Joe Burrow one of the best tight ends prospects really in a while? He's already gone in my mock draft. So I think they address the tackle position. And I have them taking tackle Talise Fuaga, I think that's how you say his name, tackle out of Oregon State. They just fill one of their needs. It's not really a flashy pick by any means, but they get the job done with this pick. And then moving on to the Rams, they have a ton of needs: quarterback, defensive line, linebacker, cornerback. And the big news is Aaron Donald did retire in the offseason, so there's going to be a massive hole in that defensive line, really in the center of it. So I have them addressing that with their first pick. I have them taking Jerzon Newton out of Illinois. I know filling in for Aaron Donald, stepping into his shoes is going to be a tough role to fill, but they just do their best here with what they've got, and that's how they address this draft is they find Aaron Donald's replacement. Then moving on to pick number 20, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers, and everything I've seen about the Steelers this offseason has them taking some sort of offensive lineman to address that need. They brought in Russell Wilson, they brought in Justin Fields, so I don't think they need to address quarterback at all, and even if they did, I don't think they would do it in the first round. So I do have them addressing the offensive line. And in some things I see it has them taking tackle, and others it has them taking a guard. And here I do have them taking a tackle. So the second tackle in 3 picks, I have them taking J.C. Latham out of Alabama to just shore up the Steelers' offensive line for the future. Then moving on to pick number 21, we have the Miami Dolphins. And they're another team kind of like the Steelers where a lot of everything I've seen has them taking an offensive lineman of some sort. And I have them taking Jackson Powers Johnson out of Oregon. On NFL's website, it has him listed as a center, but a lot of things I've seen have him getting pushed out to a guard. So I think that's where the Dolphins will use him, is as a guard. In pick number 22, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. Their needs: wide receiver, linebacker, defensive back. I do think they address their secondary position, and I have them taking Cooper DeJean, cornerback out of Iowa. I know he didn't perform at the combine, but his pro day was just recently. He did test pretty good in a lot of the things he did. So late first round pick. I think that's where he's always kind of been projected this entire offseason. But they take the corner out of Iowa. They might swing him to safety depending on how he fits there. But regardless, they just address their secondary with this pick. Then at pick number 23, the Vikings are back on the clock. This was Cleveland's pick, who then traded it to Houston in the Deshaun Watson trade. And then Houston then traded it to the Vikings. So the Vikings are back on the clock. They got Michael Penix with their first pick. So now I think they will address the offensive line to protect their young quarterback of the future. And I think they go back to the Washington pool of players, and I think they grab offensive tackle Troy Fautanu. Why not? Just your first round, just draft some Washington players. They had a really good year last year, making it to the college football playoffs. They ultimately fell short, but still. So both of their first round picks come out of Washington as they get their offensive tackle long term and a long term quarterback. But anyway, moving on to the Dallas Cowboys at pick 24, and they have a bunch of needs: running back, wide receiver, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, cornerback, and they really didn't address anything in free agency. So this is another pick where it could really go in a whole bunch of different ways. But I have them addressing the offensive line as well. This seems to be a pretty deep wide receiver class, offensive line class, and really quarterback class. Really a lot of positions on the offense, and I have them taking Amarius Mims, the offensive tackle out of Georgia. Tyron Smith left the Cowboys in free agency, so just another reason to draft Mims as he just replaces Smith, who they lost. Then we have the Green Bay Packers. Their needs: offensive line, defensive line, and secondary, and I do think they address their defensive secondary. They always seem to go defensive players in the first round, and I have them drafting cornerback Kool-Aid McKinstry out of Alabama. Then at pick number 26, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, another team that really just has a ton of holes to fill. And they're a team where I think they're just going to grab the best player available, and that, in this case, is edge Leotu Ladu out of UCLA, and they just shore up that defensive line. Then at pick number 27, we have the Arizona Cardinals back on the clock. They drafted wide receiver Marvin Harrison with their first pick, and I think they go to the other side of the ball and address their defense with this pick. But I do think they stay in the Big Ten with this pick, and I have them drafting Chop Robinson out of Penn State, give them a really solid edge rusher with a bunch of upside. Then at pick number 28, we have the Buffalo Bills. In the process of writing this video, they decided that they were going to trade Stefon Diggs to the Houston Texans, so that left a huge hole at wide receiver. So I kind of went back and made it to where they're going to draft a wide receiver now, because who does Josh Allen have to throw the ball to besides, his great set of tight ends in Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid? So I do have them addressing wide receiver, and I have them drafting Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU. He's a big guy at 6'4", so definitely a big target. He can definitely be used as a weapon in this Buffalo Bills offense. They address what I think is their biggest hole. And then at pick number 29, we have the Detroit Lions on the clock, and I have them taking cornerback Nate Wiggins. Cam Sutton was released in the offseason, and this is another case of why not just draft one of the best players available that also fills a hole for your team? So that's what I have Detroit doing here. And then at pick number 30, we have the Baltimore Ravens on the clock. And the Ravens are another team where I think they just address their offensive line needs. And I have them taking Tyler Guyton, an offensive tackle out of Oklahoma. And then at pick number 31, we have the San Francisco 49ers. And with the 49ers, I think they just kind of go with the best player available, really. And I have them taking defensive end Darius Robinson out of Missouri. So let me just type that in real quick. And then with the last pick in the first round, pick number 32, the Kansas City Chiefs are on the clock. And I have them addressing wide receiver. And there's still a ton of decent wide receivers available. And I have them taking Xavier Worthy out of Texas. He broke the 40-yard dash record with just insane speed. Everybody who watched the Kansas City last year really knows that they had a ton of wide receiver issues. They did get Marquise Brown in the offseason, so they did address it in free agency, but I think they doubled down, grabbed the fastest receiver in combine history. So yeah, so here's a complete list of my NFL mock draft. I'll just do a quick run through. So Caleb Williams going number 1 overall to the Bears. Jaden Daniels going number 2 to the Commanders. J.J. McCarthy going 3 to the Patriots. Marvin Harrison Jr. going 4th to the Cardinals. Malik Neighbors going 5th to the Chargers. Drake May going 6th to the Giants. Joe Alt going 7th to the Titans. Jared Verse going 8th to the Falcons. Olu Fashanu going 9th to the Bears. Brock Bowers going 10th to the Jets. Michael Penix Jr. going 11th to the Vikings. Terran Arnold going 12th to the Broncos. Quinion Mitchell going 13th to the Raiders. Rome Odunze going 14th to the Saints. Adonai Mitchell going 15th to the Colts. Dallas Turner going 16th to the Seahawks. And then Byron Murphy going 17th to the Jaguars. Talise Fuaga going 18th to the Bengals. Jerzon Newton going 19th to the Rams. J.C. Latham going 20th to the Steelers. Jackson Powers Johnson going 21st to the Dolphins. Cooper DeJean going 22nd to the Eagles. Troy Fautanu going 23rd to the Vikings. Amarius Mims going 24th to the Cowboys. Kool-Aid McKinstry going 25th to the Packers. Leatu Latu going 26th to the Buccaneers. Chop Robinson going 27th to the Cardinals. Brian Thomas Jr. going 28th to the Bills. Nate Wiggins going 29th to the Lions. Tyler Guyton going 30th to the Ravens. Demaryius Robinson going 31st to the 49ers. And Xavier Worthy going 32nd to the Chiefs. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about this mock draft, what you would change. I know I didn't do any trades. I tried to be realistic in who these teams would get. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. If you like this, what you would change, what you would keep the same. But yeah, anyway, I hope you liked the video. Please subscribe to the channel. I will catch you with another video. God bless.